There he is.
Dr. D, you want to start us off with our greetings and come to order?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Oh, good. Right, so entertain motion that we start the meeting that's being recorded. And I'd also like to request that those who are not talking to put their phone on mute to avoid feedback. Do I get a second?
Seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ted. I hear you loud and clearly. Now, now, Katie, are you going to be starting the meeting with your report?
KD, you're muted.
Sorry, getting used to Zoom again.
God damn it.
I had, we'd approved the minutes from the previous meeting, and then Ted and I will jump into the report to go over it quickly.
Okay, so I'll make a motion then, Katie, to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay, and so I think I'm going to turn the program over to Ted and KD, and I'm going to mute.
Okay, thank you, Dr. D.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Ted.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen and make sure it's legible.
It's good from here.
Good, so if anyone who's joining us from the public, you may not know me, I'm a new face. My name's Katie and I'm the operations manager here now since 2021. But we are playing a little bit of catch up and we're now presenting our 2020 annual meeting and the 2020 annual report to go along with it. So I'm just gonna quickly kind of glaze over. This report is published online and everyone has access to it. So if you want to get really into the nitty gritty of what we wrote, you're more than welcome to read through it. So here's our report. It starts with a little profile of us. So we're the Essex Shipbuilding Museum, well, the Essex Historical Society and Shipbuilding Museum. And our mission is to provide a center of education, preservation, and study of traditional Essex shipbuilding and the community that supported it. So we also go over our vision, talking about encompassing the skills, the creative learning abilities, and connectedness to the environment of Essex shipbuilders, and how gaining an understanding and appreciation of their craftsmanship really serves as a valuable model for work today. And go on a little bit more, it gives us a little bit of background about the museum, which was established in 1976, an observation of the American Revolutionary Bicentennial. So a bit more about us. In 2020, this was our standing board of directors. We have some new names on this list now, but this was as of the end of 2020. And our 2020 professional staff, which has also changed quite a lot. The pandemic brought a kind of shuffle to many organizations, us included. So 2020 in review. This is a bit of a letter, just kind of explaining it was a difficult year for everyone, and we were forced to halt operations as they were normally, just like every other small museum and a lot of other organizations in the US and in the world. But despite the challenges that were faced, we had tremendous outpouring of support from the community, and our dedicated staff and volunteers and the board really kept the place alive, and we were able to get some really great accomplishments along the way. And thank you to everybody who stayed involved through this time. I know it's a bit of a different interaction with museums than we had in the past. Now I can turn this over to Ted for the financial snapshot. So a little look at what our financials were going on, and I'm gonna make us small so you can see it.
So I think the point from a fiscal perspective in 2020, we obviously had to furlough staff. We had to shutter the museum. So we didn't have tours. We did manage to keep some of the programs going, which was wonderful that we managed to do that. And therefore, our income was fairly seriously compromised. And you can see that really by the total revenues we had for the year. However, we were able to offset some of that when we furloughed staff with PPP loans as well, which certainly helped keep our income a little higher than we would have expected it to be. So we took advantage of everything that we could from sort of federal and local perspective in terms of assistance. And that helped us finish the year in a not too uncomfortable position. We, as you can see, we certainly ran expenses well above. We wanted to keep people engaged. We obviously had to maintain the facilities, keep everything running. And we did cut back substantially on the personnel side. And that's kind of indicated as when we looked into 2021 and a couple of our staff had moved on as a result of situations. The other thing that was, I think a lot of people were surprised by how rapidly the investment markets bounced back. And that you can see really from the balance sheet. The balance sheet from the end of 19 through to the end of 20 really didn't change that significantly. But if you look at it through the year, there was a huge drop when the markets got completely spooked by everything that was going on with COVID, and understandably so. But then the thing that I think all of us were quite staggered by was how rapidly it came back. So we ended the year in a fairly sound position, especially as we'd taken advantage of what loans we could and furloughing. We also incurred a little bit of extra expense because of the fact that we had people furloughed, so we had to pay for unemployment benefits, which is something the museum does on an as incurred basis. We don't pay it on an ongoing basis, so that hit us quite hard as well. But all in all, we came out with a strong balance sheet and ready to really get things going again once COVID allowed. And hopefully you'll see the results of those endeavors when we talk about 2021 in the not so distant future. So with that all said, I will hand back to KD to continue with some of our programs and the activities.
Thank you, Ted. I'll go over to here. So let me put it back on speaker. So shipyard happenings, education. Our education programs, completely stopped for a while because they had to. But when the regulations allowed for students to meet in person again, our group from the Topsfield Vocational Academy came back to the shipyard and they began the design and construction of an 18-foot Ben Garvey design skiff. It's a beautiful boat. It's since been launched, and they designed it particularly to be a chase boat for future rowing programs on our fleet of student-built Sharptown barges. It is the absolute perfect Essex River boat. It draws probably like 4 inches, and it handles incredibly well. And the TVA students actually we expanded on the program and offer an additional day a week. It was 1 day a week, but now we do 2 days every week. So that way we can really enable the social distancing and the really small class sizes. TVA is a small class already, but with busing them over in a van and how all that worked out, it turned out to be very beneficial to add the extra day for them. The TVA students also assisted the staff and volunteers with the construction of the temporary shed to house the timbers of the Cogswell's barn. And we'll go a little bit more into that barn shed later on. More work that just did not stop was work in our archives. So our archives team is largely made up of volunteers, and we have 3 volunteers that are there religiously, Jim, Kurt, and Charlie. And they kept on working and classifying vessels and going through different records and accessioning the collection. And then when the state health recommendations allowed, they got 2 interns from high school who came in to digitize documents and photographs. So they really, they kept working through all of this, and the operations administrator, Chris Stepler, who was there at the time, he kept all of this public by writing a newsletter every week, or I think it was every week, that highlighted what was going on in the archives, in the shipyard, and really sharing our work with the public. And we wouldn't be the facility that we are, or the museum we are, without our volunteers, and we're so grateful. So as a lot of you know, at the end of 2019, there was a scramble to save the historic Cogswell's barn that was at the site of the current public safety building in Essex. And that structure was completely dismantled and cataloged as it was dismantled and put into a container for storage. Once it was in storage, it became clear that to properly evaluate the timbers, we needed a viable workspace. So the volunteer team came together in 2020 and they designed and constructed that space. So the group met in 18 Saturdays and constructed this really impressive, beautiful temporary shed to house the timbers, where they could be evaluated while feasibility for reconstruction is discussed. The 20 by 50 structure was designed specifically to house the timbers that measure up to 48 feet long, as well as to be dismantled in a way that's going to allow all of those materials to be recycled and built into something else. And so that's really significant. We are so grateful to all of the people who donated time and money and equipment and resources to allow us to build this structure. And we wanted to make sure that everything that went into it wouldn't be wasted when it was dismantled. And looking on to the future, and the future we're living in is 2021. We can't express how grateful we are to all of the people who came together and made 2020 a success. It was very challenging for a lot of different reasons, and it was all of the support that came from everywhere that really made this work. And thank you to our grant funders. Tremendous support from Mass Cultural Council. Mass Charitable Mechanics actually bought a bunch of new tools for our students. We had support from Applied Materials, Bank Gloucester, Cape Ann Community Foundation, Essex County Community Foundation, and Beveridge Family and Tenney Family Foundations. And then some corporate support for the barn project, the barn rescue project. And we had Mayor Tree, which helped us dismantle the barn and let us use their equipment, or brought their equipment to do that. Precision Roofing put the roof on our shed. Tapley Sawmill, who provided all of the lumber at cost, and Anchor Seal and the Manchester Essex Rotary Club. And all of our lovely donors. This is a vast list, and I'll just kind of scroll through it like the credits of a movie. We had an incredible amount of private, public, individual, corporate support throughout the year that really kept us alive and relevant and made this all possible. So thank you. Thank you, thank you to all of the gracious donors. And we'll keep scrolling down to the end. It's really, really impressive actually to see how much support we've got.
Very much appreciated. Without you guys, we wouldn't exist.
All right, and that is that for the report. Does anybody have any the questions or comments or stories for the greater good?
Thank you, KD, for that presentation. The visuals were great. Thank you, Ted, for keeping the ship afloat. I think we've been very fortunate to have your talent to be able to watch over our investments. I think that's between your leadership and between the leadership of KD and also Natasha, we've really been able to pull through this pandemic. And there's still a lot more ahead of us. And I feel confident that the museum will continue to grow under this sort of leadership.
Thank you, Dr. D. So if that's all, I hope that all of you from the public will join us for our 2021 annual meeting and report, which will be coming soon in the spring. So we're going to kind of reset the calendar and start reporting in every spring now. So in just a couple of months, we'll be knocking again with more good stuff from the year 2021 and reports on all of our reopening and reinvigorated programs and exhibits and everything else we have going on. So thank you so much. And we will we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.